The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow little chuckle, bounced off the laundry room tiles like mildew that wouldn't wash out. "You're lucky I even let you touch me," she said. That's what my wife, Vanessa, chose to spit at me after 22 years of marriage. Like I was some leper who'd won a raffle. Never mind the decades of paying bills, fixing her mistakes, covering her credit card messes, and listening to her drone on about Pilates and overpriced wine tastings. Nope. According to her, I was just a placeholder husband. A piece of furniture with a pulse. She turned, humming to herself, tossing her blouse into the dryer like nothing had happened. I just watched her. Not angry. Not even sad. Something sharper than that. I folded the last t-shirt, the one from that old state fair we went to before the veneers, before the networking dinners, before she forgot how to ask me how my day was. I folded it with more care than I'd handled her in years, placed it neatly on the stack, and walked out. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. A giggle. Another message from her little escape hatch, whoever he was this week. I'd synced her phone to the family iPad months ago. She never noticed. She thought it was just for Netflix in the guest room. Amateur move. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Wrinkled? Maybe. Slower than 40? Sure. But I was still the guy who built machines that carved titanium down to half a hair's width. 20 men worked under me, and not one of them dared miss a measurement. Yet in this house, I was just a stand-in husband. But placeholders? We don't argue. We execute. I went downstairs to my office, opened that drawer I hadn't touched in months. Inside was the small oak box I'd carved myself after retiring, supposed to be for cufflinks. Instead, it held something better. Clarity. I opened it. Empty for now. Not for long. I flipped open my laptop, steady hands, steady breath. The folder was still there, waiting. Labeled simply, June Justice. First file, email printouts. A realtor friend of hers, Celeste, had CC'd her on fun weekends in Ridge Hill. Funny, since those dates matched exactly with the training retreats she claimed were for work. Next, the texts. My favorite thread. Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL. And his reply? A thumbs up and a shirtless bathroom selfie. I recognized the wallpaper. The Burstone Hotel. Lavender lobby, stale desperation. That's betrayal for you. It even has a scent. Later that night, she floated downstairs, makeup off, wearing that smug little robe she only used when she wanted to play affectionate wife. You didn't say goodnight, she purred, fake concern dripping from her voice. I figured you were tired of touching me. I replied, smiling. She blinked, muted for once. You're being dramatic, she muttered. I nodded slowly, like a man who didn't mind being underestimated. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. When the house finally went quiet around 11:17 p.m., her tablet sliding off her chest mid-podcast, her fake snores filling the room, I went back to my office. Desk lamp only. Shadows sharp as razors. The oak box sat in the center of the desk. Still empty, but not for long. The printer hummed, spitting out the first batch. Celeste's emails, airline confirmations, Ridge Hill rentals. Chronology matters when you're about to dismantle someone's life. I stacked them neatly, paper clips lined like soldiers. Next came the iPad. Screen unlocked, synced texts all waiting for me like a bad novel. Screenshots, dates, times, location tags. Her love notes to the man who once fixed our deck. A guy I had offered a beer to. He had thanked me like a son. My knuckles tightened, but I didn't let it linger. I clicked save and dropped everything into the encrypted folder labeled June Justice. 3 backups. 1 flash drive. 1 cloud. 1 copy offsite. She once called me slow in front of friends. You move like you're buffering, she joked. They laughed. I smiled. Because slowness isn't weakness, it's precision. The next morning at breakfast, she floated into the kitchen in yoga pants and a messy bun, humming some recycled pop hit from her 20s. Morning, she said, stealing a bite of my toast like nothing had changed. I handed her coffee, kissed the top of her head. You're sweet, she said, scrolling through her phone. I nodded. See? I knew you'd get over it. Over it? I asked. She smirked, sipping. Last night. You were sulking. Right. Sulking. Like a child denied dessert. I just buttered another slice of toast, calm as ever. Inside my head, I was already laying the foundation. Later that day, while she ran errands, I opened the fireproof safe and slipped in the growing stack of evidence. Emails, receipts, screenshots. Each one a brick. Each one a nail. And as I closed the safe, I thought, she still thinks I'm playing defense. Funny thing about chess, sometimes you let them think they're winning until your queen's already behind their king. That be why the following Thursday, Vanessa had shifted into full performance mode. You know the type? Extra smiles, extra perfume, and a sudden interest in date nights after 6 months of treating me like wallpaper. "Let's go out," she said, twirling her keys like she was auditioning for a rom-com. "Where?" I asked. "Oh, just dinner. Burstone, maybe." The Burstone. Of course. Her lavender-scented hideout. I smiled. Perfect. At the table, she played the doting wife. Hand on my arm. Forced laughter. Ordering a second bottle of wine like she wasn't planning to work late with her deck-fixing contractor later. Halfway through her tirade about how her business contacts just don't appreciate her hustle, I leaned forward. "You know, I've been thinking about reorganizing our accounts. For efficiency." She perked up instantly, because nothing excites a cheater like the thought of fresh access to funds. "Oh, that's smart. You've always been so good with that stuff." I just nodded, sipping my water. In reality, the accounts were already reorganized. 2 weeks earlier. Every joint credit line rerouted. Every asset shielded. The woman sitting across from me didn't realize she was dining on lobster with a man who had already erased her name from the future. The waiter slid the bill between us. She snatched it up with a flourish. "I'll get this one. I had a good commission this week." Good commission? Or was it hush money slipped to her by the man who sent bathroom selfies from the Burstone suite? I didn't say a word. I let her sign the slip, smug as a cat licking cream. On the drive home, she hummed to herself, satisfied. She thought the dinner proved she was in control again. But what she didn't know, that receipt was already in the safe. And by tomorrow, her little commission would be a footnote in the case I was quietly drafting against her. The thing about liars is they're like stage actors. They can rehearse their lines, hit their marks, even fake a few tears if the scene calls for it. But eventually, when the stage lights get too hot, they slip. And when they slip, it's never small. Vanessa's first real crack came on a Sunday morning. She came into the kitchen wearing that robe again, the one she liked to parade around in when she wanted to look affectionate without actually being affectionate. Makeup-free, messy bun, like she was auditioning for the role of relatable wife. She sat on the bar stool, scrolling through her phone, pretending she wasn't waiting for me to cook breakfast. I cracked eggs into the skillet, slid toast into the toaster. Routine. Normal. Safe. Then her phone buzzed. Loud. Normally she'd swipe it away, face down, quick and casual. Not this time. This time she froze, just half a beat, but long enough for me to notice. Then she turned the phone slightly, as if shielding it from me. "Spam?" I asked, not turning from the stove. "Yeah, just some junk," she replied too fast, voice a notch higher than usual. And right there I saw it. A hairline fracture in her porcelain performance. I plated the eggs, slid one plate in front of her, and sat down with mine. She smiled weakly, shoved a forkful into her mouth. "Too quick again. Too forced. You've been quiet lately," she said, eyes darting toward me like she was checking a gauge. "Have I?" I asked, calmly buttering toast. "Yeah, like, I don't know, withdrawn. Is something wrong?" I smiled at her. "You tell me." For a flicker of a second, her jaw tightened, but then the mask snapped back on. "You're imagining things. I just worry about you." Worry. That word. The same word she'd once used when her Pilates instructor texted her at 11 p.m. about stretching technique. I didn't answer. I just kept eating. Silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the clink of forks. She hated silence. Always had. It left too much room for truth. Finally, she tried again. "You know, I was thinking, maybe we should take a trip. Somewhere warm. Reset, you know." I looked up, raised an eyebrow. "Who's we?" That got her. For the first time in months, she blinked like I'd slapped her. "Us. Obviously. Who else would I mean?" I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. "I don't know, Vanessa. You tell me. Who else would you mean?" She forced a laugh. A brittle, tinny sound. "God, you're dramatic." Dramatic. There it was again. Her favorite word whenever I got too close to the truth. I stood, collected my plate, and rinsed it in the sink. Calm. Unshaken. I could feel her eyes drilling into my back, searching for some clue, some sign that I was about to explode. But I didn't. Because the thing she never understood was this: men like me don't explode. We calculate. Later that afternoon, I excused myself to the office under the guise of organizing old paperwork. What I was actually doing was cataloging every single lie she'd told me that week. I had a legal pad split down the middle, what she said on one side, what I knew to be true on the other. It was a short list, but it was damning. Tuesday, client dinner. Reality: Burstone receipt, 2 entrees, no client name. Thursday, gym after work. Reality: phone pinged at the contractor's duplex. Saturday, early open house. Reality: iPad message: thanks for last night, winky face. The evidence wasn't just a pile anymore. It was a blueprint. And like any good engineer, I knew that blueprints were only useful if you built something with them. That night, Vanessa came into the bedroom wearing perfume. Not the cheap body spray she usually wore around me, but the expensive French one she reserved for networking events. She slid into bed beside me, draping her arm across my chest. "You've been distant," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "I miss us." I almost laughed. Miss us? She hadn't missed me in years. She missed the idea of me, the safety net, the cover story, the boring husband who didn't ask questions. I kissed her forehead. "I know," I said softly. "We'll fix it." She melted, thinking she'd won, thinking the show was still going on as planned. Meanwhile, in the drawer of my nightstand, the oak box sat heavier than it should have. Inside it, fresh printouts, time-stamped screenshots, and a hotel invoice with her signature scrawled across it. Evidence, layer by layer. The next morning, I went for a drive. Not aimlessly. Precision, remember? I stopped by the bank, adjusted one more account, signed one more transfer. I stopped by a friend's office, someone Vanessa didn't even know existed, slid a flash drive across the desk, and said, "Keep this safe, just in case." By the time I got home, she was on the phone in the kitchen, giggling like a teenager. When she saw me, she covered the mic with her hand. "Business call," she mouthed. I nodded, poured myself coffee, and walked out. Upstairs, I sat at my desk and wrote a single sentence in bold letters across the top of the yellow legal pad. She thinks I'm still playing the fool. And that, my friend, was the first crack. Because once they start cracking, they don't stop. They splinter. They collapse. And Vanessa? She was already too arrogant to notice the walls caving in. I'll give her credit. Vanessa had a knack for pretending. If deceit were an Olympic sport, she'd have a gold medal, a book deal, and a podcast about self-empowerment through boundaries. But even world-class liars slip when the script goes stale. Her first slip was the phone. The second? Money. It was a Tuesday evening when she flung herself onto the couch, sighing like she'd just wrestled a bear. "Rough day," she said, her eyes glued to her phone. "I might need a little loan from our joint account, just until commission clears." Now, this was interesting, because as far as she knew, that account was fat and healthy, stocked with the spoils of my decades of careful saving. But as far as reality was concerned, I had already siphoned the life out of it. Every dollar rerouted to places she'd never find. "Oh," I asked casually, flipping the TV remote. "How much?" She bit her lip, an act, the kind she used when she wanted to look vulnerable. "Maybe 5 grand. I smiled. "Sure. You know the PIN." Her thumbs flew across her phone. Seconds later, I heard it, the faintest little intake of breath. Like someone who just realized their parachute cord wasn't where they left it. "What's wrong?" I asked, still staring at the TV. She swallowed. "Bank must be having issues." "Yeah," I said softly. "Happens sometimes." Her eyes narrowed at me then, just for a moment. A test. She was wondering, did I know? Did I move the money? Did the dull placeholder finally wake up? But then she shook her head, pasted on her little pageant smile, and went back to scrolling. Classic Vanessa. When confronted with smoke, she just sprayed more perfume. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at my desk and updated the folder. I added a new section labeled Financial Shifts. Every dollar, every transfer, every shell account carefully logged. Not just for my safety. Oh no. This was all going to be part of Act 3. Because betrayal isn't just personal. It's logistical. And if you want to really win, you don't just leave them. You dismantle the story they told themselves about how safe they were. The next crack came faster than I expected. Friday evening, she breezed into the house, shopping bags in hand, humming like a woman without a care. I was in the kitchen, polishing off a bourbon. She dumped the bags on the counter, designer shoes, some ridiculous silk blouse, and a bottle of perfume I recognized instantly. New scent? I asked. She lit up, twirling the bottle. Yeah, Celeste told me about it. Supposedly irresistible. I said, sipping. Who are you trying to be irresistible for? Her smile froze mid-twitch. What? You heard me, I said, calm as ever. For once, she didn't have a ready line. She stammered, then recovered. You're ridiculous. For you, obviously. Of course, I said, finishing the bourbon. For me. But we both knew that perfume had never been meant for me. The following week, I decided to tighten the noose. Not a violent tightening. No, I'm not a brute. This was chess, not boxing. I scheduled a dinner at the Burstone. Same place she used for her little rendezvous. When I suggested it, she hesitated for just half a second too long. Burstone? Why there? It's convenient, I said smoothly. And besides, you always liked it. She forced a smile. Sure. Sounds fun. At the table, I ordered wine. She kept glancing at the entrance, eyes darting like a nervous rookie gambler. Waiting for him, maybe. Or praying he wouldn't walk in while she was with me. Halfway through dinner, I leaned forward. Vanessa, do you ever get the feeling you're underestimating someone? Her fork froze midair. What do you mean? I shrugged. Just in life. People assume someone's predictable, easy to read. But then that person does something unexpected. She stared at me, eyes narrowing. Is this supposed to mean something? Not at all, I said, smiling. Just making conversation. She laughed, too loudly, too brittle. But her hand shook when she reached for her wine. First time I'd seen that in years. When we got home, she excused herself to the bathroom, phone in hand. I gave her 5 minutes before I opened the synced iPad. Sure enough, there it was. A fresh text to the contractor. He knows something. Be careful. And his reply? Relax. He's clueless. I saved the thread into the June Justice folder. Evidence didn't just fall into my lap anymore. It practically threw itself. When she finally came back into the room, she forced a smile. So, what did you mean earlier about people being underestimated? I looked at her evenly. I meant exactly what I said. She laughed again, nervously, and sat down beside me. You've been so cryptic lately. It's weird. Maybe you're just not used to me talking in code, I said, standing. She tilted her head. Code? Never mind, I replied. You'll figure it out. Her smile faltered. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure of her footing. And that, right there, was the turn of the screw. Because from that night on, she didn't laugh as easily. She didn't hum as much. And she started checking the bank account twice a day, like a gambler who knows the house always wins but keeps praying for one more lucky hand. One evening, while she was out showing a property, I sat in my office and wrote a single sentence at the top of my pad. She thinks she's still steering. She has no idea I cut the brakes. And I smiled, because this was no longer just about gathering evidence. This was about timing. And timing is everything. The funny thing about masks is that they're easier to keep on when the stage lights are dim and the audience is small. But the moment the crowd gets bigger, the cracks show. And Vanessa? She loved a crowd, which made her inevitable. It was a Saturday afternoon when the universe handed me my opening. We were invited to a little backyard barbecue hosted by one of her realtor friends, the kind of event where people wore sunglasses the size of dinner plates and casually bragged about square footage between bites of potato salad. I didn't even want to go, but I knew she'd insist because these parties gave her a stage. And when a liar steps onto a stage, they start to perform. So I went. Vanessa floated in like she was the guest of honor. Sun hat, white dress, wine glass in hand before she even took her sandals off. She laughed too loudly, touched arms too freely, and acted like we were the couple everyone wanted to be. I played my role, the quiet husband, polite, sipping beer, listening more than speaking, letting her believe the spotlight was all hers. But then it happened. Halfway through the afternoon, she slipped. I was standing by the grill with a couple of guys talking football when I caught her voice carrying across the patio. She was leaned in close to her friend Celeste, giggling. Oh, don't even start. If Mark ever found out, I'd be toast. I froze. Celeste smirked, sipping her wine. Girl, you're playing with fire. Vanessa laughed again, her voice dripping arrogance. Please. He's clueless. He still thinks I'm some angel who just works late. The two of them cackled like it was the funniest thing in the world. And here's the part that made me smile. Not outwardly, not enough to give myself away, but deep inside where the fuse had been burning for months. Because she didn't realize the guy manning the grill next to me was Celeste's husband. And his face? His jaw clenched so tight you could hear enamel grinding. She wasn't just betraying me. She was careless enough to humiliate her friend in front of her own husband. Perfect. I didn't say a word. Didn't flinch. I just sipped my beer, let the words hang in the air, and filed the moment away in the June Justice folder that lived in my head. The drive home was even better. She hummed along to the radio, tipsy, smug. Fun party, right? Yeah, I said, eyes on the road. Heard some interesting things. She tensed for just a fraction of a second. Like what? Oh, just people talking, I said casually. Funny how things slip when folks get comfortable. She forced a laugh. You're being weird again. I smiled. Am I? For the rest of the ride, she kept glancing at me like I was a ticking bomb. But I stayed calm, steady hands on the wheel, humming along to the radio like nothing was wrong. Because nothing was wrong, not for me, anyway. The plan was moving exactly as I wanted. The next week, I tightened the net. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. Quietly, no fanfare, just a simple visit downtown. We reviewed the folder, the emails, the texts, the receipts, even a fresh statement from Celeste's husband, who was suddenly very motivated to talk. My lawyer whistled low. You've built a fortress here. She won't see it coming. That's the idea, I said. We drafted documents. Contingencies. Traps disguised as paperwork. By the time I left that office, I wasn't just prepared for divorce. I was prepared for scorched earth without ever raising my voice. Vanessa, meanwhile, was unraveling. The first sign came when she asked about our accounts again. We should probably move some money into my name, just in case, she said one evening while pretending to fold laundry. Why? I asked. Well, you know, taxes, estate planning, that kind of thing. I raised an eyebrow. Since when do you care about estate planning? She forced a smile. I'm just trying to be responsible. Responsible, I repeated. That's new. Her smile faltered. I walked over, kissed her cheek, and whispered, don't worry. Everything's in the right place. She didn't know whether to feel reassured or terrified. That was the sweet spot. The second sign came at dinner with friends a few nights later. We were at a steakhouse, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, when one of her girlfriends teased her. Vanessa, you've been glowing lately. Must be all that networking. The table erupted in laughter. Vanessa blushed, swatted her friend's arm, tried to laugh it off. But when she glanced at me across the table, her face tightened. I just smiled, cut into my steak, and said, yeah, she's been working hard. The silence that followed was delicious. Everyone suddenly very interested in their plates. Vanessa forced a giggle, changed the subject. But I could see it, the seed of doubt sprouting in her head. For the first time, she wondered if I was holding cards she couldn't see. By the end of the month, she was restless, checking her phone constantly, snapping at me for little things, pacing the house at night. One evening, as I sat reading in the living room, she finally snapped. Why are you so calm lately? She demanded. I looked up from my book. Should I not be? You act like you know something I don't. I smiled. Vanessa, I've always known things you don't. Her mouth opened, closed. She stared at me like she was trying to solve an equation with too many variables. Finally, she scoffed. You're paranoid. You always have been. I closed the book gently. No, I'm precise. And that was the end of the conversation. She stormed off to the bedroom, slammed the door. I sat there in the silence, smiling to myself. Because the mask had slipped in public. And once a mask slips, it never goes back on quite the same. Later that night, as she pretended to sleep, I updated the yellow pad in my office. At the top of the page, I wrote a single sentence in neat block letters. She thinks paranoia is weakness. She doesn't know it's a blueprint. I slid the pad into the oak box, locked it, and poured myself another bourbon. The clock was ticking now, and soon, the whole house of cards would come down. After the barbecue fiasco, I decided it was time to move from gathering evidence to planting it. A magician's trick. Give the volunteer a rope, let them tie it around their own neck, and smile while they think it's all part of the show. The trap was simple: opportunities. One evening, I forgot my iPad on the kitchen counter, left open on my email. A decoy folder sat right there, titled Finances, Private. Inside, dummy spreadsheets showing offshore transfers and hidden accounts. None of it real, all of it bait. Sure enough, the next morning the files had been opened. Twice. That afternoon, she asked, too casually, so, uh, do you have anything I should know about? I looked her dead in the eye. Everyone has secrets, Vanessa, don't they? She paled, stammered something about coffee, and walked out. The bait had worked. She thought she'd uncovered leverage. What she didn't know was that every click she made was logged. More evidence. 2 days later, I accidentally left a receipt from a downtown law firm on the desk. I made sure she saw it. That night, she asked if I was working on something legal. Just estate stuff, I said smoothly. You know, planning ahead. She smiled too brightly. Good idea. Always smart to plan. Translation, she thought she was one step ahead. But the truth? She was sprinting straight into the pit.by now. The paranoia had eaten her alive. She checked the bank account 6 times a day. She whispered into her phone in the laundry room. She snapped at me over nothing, spilled coffee, misplaced keys, a tone she imagined in my voice. The woman who once called me dull was now unraveling in real time. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen. What do you want from me, Mark? She shouted. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? You've been acting off. Like you know something. Like you're waiting for me to. She cut herself short, biting her lip. I set down my glass of water. Vanessa, I'm not waiting for you to do anything. I'm just patient. Her eyes narrowed. Patient for what? I smiled. For the truth. She stormed off, muttering under her breath. Later, I checked the iPad. Fresh messages. Vanessa, he's suspicious. I think he's planning something. Contractor, relax. He's too soft. Just keep playing dumb. I saved them, dropped them in the June Justice folder. By now, I didn't even have to dig. She was handing me the rope herself. It was a Thursday night when I finally made my move. She came home late, hair disheveled, perfume that wasn't hers clinging to her blouse. She tried to slip past me into the bedroom, but I was waiting in the living room with the oak box on the coffee table. Vanessa, I said calmly. Sit. She froze. What's this? Sit. She sat, arms crossed, jaw tight. I opened the box. One by one, I laid out the contents. Emails, receipts, photos, messages. The iPad synced threads. Bank statements. Witness statements. Chronological, neat, undeniable. Her face drained of color. You've been spying on me? No, I said. I've been documenting you. She laughed, brittle and shrill. You're pathetic. All this time and for what? You think you're going to win something? I leaned forward. No, Vanessa. I don't think. I know. Her eyes darted to the papers, then back to me. For the first time, she looked small. You can't ruin me like this, she whispered. Ruin you? I chuckled. You did that yourself. I'm just the archivist. Here's the part you won't see coming. The part she never did. I didn't scream. I didn't throw her out. I didn't file for divorce that night. No, that would have been too easy for her, too clean. Instead, I slid a single envelope across the table. She opened it, and her eyes widened. Inside was a contract. Not divorce papers. A transfer. It detailed the sale of a property she had hidden from me. A little investment she'd made with her contractor, under his name, but funded by money siphoned from ours. What she didn't know? I'd already bought his half. Quietly. Legally. You remember Ridge Hill? I asked softly. Your little getaway spot? Well, congratulations. You don't own it anymore. I do. She blinked, stunned. You can't. Oh, I can. And I did. Every mortgage, every tax, every late payment. You signed under his name, not yours. Which means it was his to sell. And now? It's mine. She shook her head, trembling. Why? What's the point? The point, I said, leaning back, isn't just to leave you. It's to let you feel exactly what you made me feel. Replaceable. Outplayed. Disposable. Silence hung between us. She finally whispered, So what happens now? I stood, collected the papers into the oak box, and locked it. Now, I said, walking toward the door. Now you get to stay? In the house. In the marriage. In the life you built on lies. But here's the difference. You don't get to touch the accounts, the assets, or the property. You're a guest in your own story. Her eyes widened. You're not divorcing me? I smiled. No, Vanessa. That would give you closure. I'm giving you permanence. She gasped, realizing. You get to live every single day knowing you lost, while pretending you didn't. That's the cruelest ending I could give you. And with that, I walked upstairs, leaving her alone in the living room. surrounded by proof of her own downfall, holding nothing but the silence she once feared so much.